Howdy y'all, and welcome to episode 3 of my All No Man's Sky Updates Ranked and Reviewed series. The series where I take my perspective as a day 1 player and evaluate the individual features and changes of every No Man's Sky update in history. 1 year at a time, of course. I then assign them 2 scores, one based on measurable criteria, more or less, and the other based entirely on my personal feelings, and then I rank them appropriately. Believe it or not, I've been keeping a detailed spreadsheet of their performance for years, so nostalgia is less of a factor than you might expect. Still, both scores are up for debate in the comments below. The goal here is to eventually catch up to the present day, and then when I review all future updates by the same criteria, I can add them to the list as they're released. So if this is your first video in the series, don't worry. I'll be briefly recapping everything up to this point, so you don't have to go back and watch the first 2. However, if you have a couple of hours to kill, and yes, I did say hours, then feel free to watch those first. But for everyone else, let me get you up to speed. Starting from day 1, we have the actual day 1 patch, version 1.03. Notable features include a full universe reset, new biomes, a new storyline, inventory improvements, gameplay improvements, and more. I rate every update based on 8 categories. The first 4 are based on the 4 pillars upon which the game was marketed. You have Explore, Fight, Trade, and Survive. The next 4 are based on the hallmarks established post-launch: story or lore, quality of life, building, and multiplayer. I then average all of these to give me an overall score between 1 and 10. Now, I know this isn't perfect, and yes, I understand that this favors larger updates over smaller ones, because they can cover more categories, but I think it's a good measure of the game's diverse audience. Just look at the response to any update they've ever published, and you'll find someone complaining that Hello Games didn't cater to them specifically. Then, the next update adds everything that they ever wanted, but now someone else feels left out. I've seen it all before. So I think this does a good job of sort of getting an overall feel for it. Now bear in mind, on this scale, from 1 to 10, a 5 is average, not bad. This isn't elementary school, you know. A 7 would be considered good, and a 3 would be considered below average. But alrighty, in the interest of time, I won't break down every metric in this recap, but the day 1 patch averages out to 5.5 based on the previously discussed criteria, and then add it to the list for its comparative ranking. Easy peasy. On top of that, I give it a personal Kanaju score. This is a completely subjective score and subject to change, as it usually does. It's also usually much higher than the criteria-based score, since I tend to personally love anything Hello Games makes. For example, I gave the day 1 patch a squiggly 8 to start with. Alright, now that you know how this works, let's do a lightning round to catch you up. Foundation, version 1.1, released November 2016. Notable features include another universe reset, the addition of base building and farming, ownable freighters, survival and creative modes, a UI overhaul, and tons more. Its average score is 6.6, placing it above the day 1 patch. I give it a personal 9 since it added a ton of amazing new stuff and improved practically every aspect of the game. Next up, we have Pathfinder, version 1.2, released March 2017. Notable features include a visual overhaul, the addition of photo mode, exocraft, starship specialization and classes, multi-tool specialization and classes, and a bunch of other great stuff. Overall score of 6.8, placing it just above Foundation. Personally, I enjoyed it, but I found it less impactful than Foundation, so I gave it an 8.75 and placed it in second. Please don't get mad. Alright, Atlas Rises version 1.3, released August 2017. Notable features include another universe reset, which added new biomes and new points of interest, 30 plus hours of story content, a visual overhaul, the mission agent, functional portals, basic multiplayer, crashed freighters, and more stuff than I could ever list here. It earned an overall score of 6.9, placing it atop the 2017 rankings, but I gave it a personal 10 out of 10 for making so many of my dreams come true at that time. And that easily puts it at the top of my personal rankings. Now, 2018's first update was Next, version 1.5, released in July. And yes, you read that right, we went nearly a whole year without any major updates. Luckily though, Next was a massive update featuring the last complete universe reset that we'd see. Fully synchronous multiplayer, third-person cameras, frigate fleets, base building overhaul, and a whole bunch more, in addition to launching on the Xbox One for the first time. Overall, the score was 8.4, giving it a pretty healthy lead over the previous updates. Me being the Atlas Rises fanboy that I am though, combined with a lack of variety in the new biome generation, led me to give it a respectable 9.5, putting it just below Atlas Rises. See, my personal opinion is often at odds with the reality of an update's impact or success. After that came the Abyss, version 1.7, released in October 2018. Notable features included an overhaul to underwater biomes, the Nautilon submarine, new underwater building parts, a new quest, new underwater creatures, and more, as always. Overall, rounded up to 6.8. Same as Pathfinder, but its actual average was lower, placing it below Pathfinder. Me being me again though, I gave it a 9 for its impressive depth. Sorry, that was a stupid pun, and I put it above Pathfinder. Sue me. No, please don't sue me. The last update to catch up on is Visions, version 1.75, released less than a month after the Abyss. And yes, that was as crazy then as it would be now. Notable features include the addition of new exotic biomes, new anomalous creatures, increased color variety across all planets, procedural loot in the form of ancient bones and salvageable scrap, exotic collectibles, a visual overhaul, and plenty more for such a seemingly small update. Despite being only positive in my opinion, it scored only 5.4 overall, placing it at the bottom of the current rankings. Of course, I had to give it a 9 myself, placing it just below Foundation due to its smaller size, but Visions remains one of my favorite updates to this day. And there we are, all caught up. If you want a detailed, and I do mean detailed, breakdown of each score, be sure to check out episodes 1 and 2 in the description below. But again, they are an hour long apiece, so, be ready. Alright, are you ready to rank and review 2019's updates? Given the lengthy intro, it's a good thing there are only 2 to cover this episode. Let's begin with the most hyped up summer update of all time, Beyond. First teased in March 2018, this update enjoyed an unusually lengthy promotional period that promised 3 pillars of content: a multiplayer overhaul, No Man's Sky VR, and something Sean referred to as No Man's Sky 2.0. What did he mean by that? Well, let's take a look. Beyond, version 2.0, released August 14th, 2019. Notable features included an overhauled multiplayer experience, the new space anomaly and nexus that we have today, VR support, an overhaul to scale and NPCs, the addition of cooking and base power, plus a lot more. Now, normally I would take you through all of the patch notes before moving on to scoring, but considering the last 2 videos were an hour each, I think I'll try something a little faster. So, it looks like we're speedrunning the patch notes. Ready? Alright, let's go. VR support. Amazing. Bought a PSVR just for this. Expanded multiplayer. Raised the player cap from 4 to 32, including VR buddies. Improved story and tutorials. Not great, but at least they tried. Ambient multiplayer. That meant rando orbs are now rando players that can shoot you. Neat. The new social hub, the space anomaly. Flagship feature. Looked great. New teleporter UI. Also looked great, but it was always broken. New blueprint trees looked cool, but broke progression in my opinion. Gameplay balance was improved overall though, with the game being less grindy and more fun for most players. The new discovery page looked really cool, it still does. The cartographer was added to space stations, but they sucked at this time. Stay tuned. NPCs could walk and interact now, this was game changing. Creature riding, the precursor to companions. Fun, but kind of pointless. Harvesting milk and egg from those creatures, not terribly fun, but less pointless, since they also added cooking and new plants to use as ingredients. Same as it is today, actually. Now, this next part is still controversial to this day. Base power. It gave us logic and interactivity at the cost of breaking every base in the game at the time. Nice. Alright, halfway through. So let's run through the rest of these patch notes lickety-split. Optimization due to making it run in VR, awesome. Improved base building, cool. Industrial base building, neat. Starships are bigger and more detailed as a result of VR, also cool. VR interactions, makes sense. Exocraft cockpits, hugely requested but only added for VR. Interesting choice, but we'll come back to this later. VR controller support, great. Vulcan support, fascinating. PC graphics options, wowee. More expanded controller support, really cool, except it doesn't include HOTAS. And finally, most important of all, saving the best for last, just as Hello Games did. Sitting. Yes, this was quite revolutionary at the time. People wrote articles, people made posts, people made videos. I'm still making a video right now about how great this sitting is. It was a pretty big deal. And as you can see below, there were also a lot more obscure patch notes to be found below. All of them game-changing in some way, of course. However, in the interest of time, both yours and mine, I vote we get to the rankings. So, for Explore, I gave it a 5, average. It added new plants to discover, new NPCs to interact with on planets, new space anomaly to explore, and a couple of new grass colors. But it didn't really change the universe in any big way. Same terrain, same biome, same flora and fauna, just a little more interactive. For Fight, I gave it a 3. It did have some minor improvements to starship combat, but sentinels were made less frequent and less aggressive. The only real change to combat came in the form of being able to punch things in VR, which is pretty cool. For Trade, I gave it a 7.5 for the new products and food recipes added to the game. They provided new ways to gather materials, craft things, and earn nanites. The travelers in the anomaly would trade nanites for food, and would trade blueprints for nanites. It was an actual trading system. That's cool. For Survive, I gave it a 4. The new food sources on planets did provide a new aspect to the survival experience. However, they weren't required since you would never go hungry. You could also feed animals and milk them, but to be honest, I feel like this should be a 3. But I'll trust my former self's evaluation and honor the 4. Story gets a 3. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to honor my past self this time. I'm giving it a 5. Average. You see, story also refers to lore and interactions of that kind. So they not only reworked the main story, but they also gave us dozens of new NPC interactions and touched up all of the old ones. So they added a large volume of little stories that I think brings the effort up a couple points. And you know what? While I'm on this topic, I'm dropping survival down to 3, because I still don't understand why it was so high. Quality of life, 6.5. Now, if that seems low, let me make this very clear. Beyond may have added hundreds of great things to the game, improving countless aspects. However, it was so broken and buggy for months after launch, I didn't enjoy playing until the next update. Seriously, I stopped playing for a while because it would just crash constantly. And before you accuse me of exaggerating, please allow me to introduce you to the No Man's Sky release log. Let's look at the Beyond era, shall we? Let's see, Beyond patch 2.04, 2.05, 2.06. Wait, what's this? Patch 2.06b, 2.06c, d, e, f, g? Sound like I'm singing the alphabet. But okay, Beyond patch 2.07, that's cool, but wait a minute. Patch 2.08 and patch 2.08a, they started with B last time. And what's this? Patch 2.09.1? 2.09.2? Another numbering scheme? Not only that, but then they have patch 2.09.4 hotfix in order to fix patch 2.09.4 itself. Now, these patches continue to 2.16, totaling 24 patches, and making my point that there was a lot of broken stuff in this release. So for all the good it did, I'm giving it a 6.5 quality of life, because it also sucked. Alright, building 7.5. In the moment, power was a pain to add to bases, but overall it did make the base building mechanics deeper and give us more freedom in a lot of ways. Plus, it added automatic creature, gas, and mineral harvesting, which I know a lot of players enjoy. Overall, it was pretty great. Multiplayer is easily the most improved aspect, with an 8.5. Player counts increased, there was a new social hub, VR worked in multiplayer, and much more. All of this averages out to an overall score of 5.75 for Beyond. Above average. Throwing it up on the board, it lands at number 6. Below Foundation, but above the Day 1 patch. Personally, I'd give it a 7. I want to give it a 2 for both not meeting my completely unrealistic expectations at the time, but as well as being so broken that the game was unplayable for months following. But if I step back and look at all the positive changes it made, I have to give it a 7. Plus, it can still be at the bottom with a 7. Haha! Okay, now I'm going to try a different, shorter format for the next update here. You let me know in the comments below which format you prefer, so maybe I can target that for the next episode. So, after months of patches following a single what I would consider disappointing summer update, 2019 wasn't looking too hot for No Man's Sky, at least to me and a fair portion of the player base. It seemed like the new content would be few and far between. However, what followed seemed to be a love letter to longtime fans. It didn't add variety or exploration, didn't have a trailer, and it's almost certainly no one's favorite update. But dear lord, did it get me back into the game. I'm talking about the aptly named Synthesis update, released November 28th, 2019. This was a quality of life update, plain and simple. Notable features included starship upgrades and salvaging, new procedural upgrade tech, new triangular base building parts, the ability to own more than one multi-tool, personal refiner, and more quality of life changes than you could shake a stick at. This update improved the game in every way, and even made all of Beyond's features shine. It was glorious, and well deserving of the name Synthesis. So instead of running down the patch notes again, I'm going to jump right into scoring, and I'll explain as I go. Explore gets a 3. They didn't add any new sites to explore, but they did make the process of exploration better. A new starship cockpit map, new discovery page, new planetary charts, all improved exploration in more subtle ways. Plus the addition of an upload all button, after 3 years of players begging, was a pretty big highlight of the year for me. Fight gets a 2. New weapon upgrades, the ability to have different weapons, and small improvements to starship combat didn't make too much of a difference overall, but I recall it feeling a little bit better to play. Trade gets a 7. The new starship salvaging created a new type of trade gameplay. Increased inventory space and improved inventory management also helped. I know it feels overrated on this scoreboard, but starship salvaging and upgrades were a huge deal back then. Last of the 4 pillars, we have Survive, which I gave it 3. The personal refiner was a real game changer. At least, I'm assuming that's why I gave it a 3. I mean, I think it's a big deal still, but I'll trust my former self here. Story gets a 1, since nothing was added, unfortunately. In contrast though, quality of life gets a 10, because holy cow, it was all good stuff. Players could now upgrade their ship class and inventory, something they'd wanted for years, as well as a money sink for wealthy players. They could scrap ships they didn't want, providing space in their freighters. Terrain manipulation was improved. You could save outfits in the appearance modifier. Regular players could switch to Exocraft cockpit view, which was previously VR exclusive. And VR players could ride animals, which was previously 2D exclusive. The new space map looked awesome and harkened back to the original interface, which many players missed. The cartographer was no longer useless, since you could now select the map of your choice. Inventory was better, tech was better, there were new base parts, you could upload all of your discoveries at once, again instead of having to upload them one by one. And the personal refiner made simple refining easy and less time consuming, since you could do it in pulse drive or at a space station. You could also own more multi-tools, so collectors rejoiced at that. Heck, overall the game just looked and ran better than it ever had. Didn't crash every session anymore, it was stable, it was polished, it was perfect. To me anyway, 10 out of 10 from me. Building got a 6, for the new base parts mostly. Multiplayer a 4 for minor improvements and bug fixes. Overall, Synthesis averages a 4.5. Yeah, it's a disappointing score for all the good it did, but again, it's nobody's favorite update. In fact, it's the only major update that didn't receive a trailer, making it one of the more obscure ones. Real shame. 4.5 puts it way on the bottom of the list, below the also underrated Visions update, and while I give it a much higher rating of 8 personally, it doesn't do much better on my list, sitting second to last, just above Beyond. So from a personal perspective, 2019 was easily the worst year for No Man's Sky up to that point. The first 7 months saw no updates, the next few months after that made the game unplayable, and then it wasn't until the end of November that it all came together. Now, I also have to mention that ByteBeat was added in December in its own mini update, trailer and all, funny enough, as a sort of Christmas gift to players. It was a fun addition and it presented a lot of new opportunities for base building and programming. I loved it, but it doesn't quite qualify to be on this list. Plus, it would get obliterated since it focused solely on one feature. but I thought it was worth mentioning since it closed out 2019 with a bang and really set us up for one of the best years in recent history, at least in terms of No Man's Sky, 2020. But that's it for episode 3. Thanks for sticking around, as I know this is probably a much longer video than usual. Again, let me know which update review format you prefer, reading the patch notes or heading straight to the scoring. And let me know if you have any great or terrible memories from any of the updates discussed today. Do you agree with my scores? I don't even agree with my scores, but I do think they're fair. Feel free to share your takes in the comments below. Just remember to keep it civil. We're all No Man's Sky fans here. In fact, if you wanted to like the video just to let me know you're a No Man's Sky fan, I wouldn't object to that. And if you don't want to miss the next episode, which will come at some point in the future, not sure yet, but you can subscribe free of charge. I publish a new No Man's Sky video every Friday, with the possibility for a bonus video earlier in the week. Well, such as this one. This one's a bonus video. And if you're interested in episodes 1 and 2, I'll link them in the description below. Fair warning though, they are long and very rambly. But thanks again for all the support and encouragement, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!